MOXy.org. We'll hear from Michael, Seattle, Washington, on our No Line. Hi.
Hi. Thanks very much for taking my call. Can I say something about Neil Young, Joe Rogan?
If it's connected to what's going on as far as trust in science and medicine with COVID, sure.
I have stuff to say about that, too. Just real quick, Joe.
Well, let's start with that then, and you can reverse it to the other thing. Yeah.
Sure. Actually, I prefer to start with that. The lady was talking about critical thinking. For me, that means questioning everything. And then another lady was saying scientists challenging each other and trying to prove each other wrong. That, again, is what I'm saying, question everything. And for me, the American Medical Association and the U.S. government has been lying to me my entire life about the medical qualities of cannabis. And they've been saying that there's zero medical qualities to cannabis. And you have to ask why, when they could have been helping hundreds of millions of people, children with epilepsy, on and on, cancer, so many different things.
And how that relates to your views to COVID?
Well, they've lied to me my whole life, so why wouldn't they be doing it now? They lied to me about cannabis because they could make a bigger profit off of it. That's the whole reason. So why wouldn't I question what they're doing now?
So as far as specifically as the medicine and science behind COVID, what are you questioning?
I'm questioning the entire medical
I know you said that, but specifically to COVID and science behind it, what are you questioning specifically, since you question everything?
My roommate of 20 years just tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago. And I sat in the same room with him. He was fully vaccinated. I'm not vaccinated. I drove in the car with him. I ate my dinners in the same room with him, and I'm fine. So, yes, I question all of this science, which is what the job of being a critical thinker is. And
Joe Rogan and Spotify?
And Joe Rogan and Neil Young, the thing about it is that Neil Young owned he owes his entire career to freedom of speech. Back in the 70s when he wrote Rockin' in the Free World, he would not have wrote that if he was in China or Russia. And now he wants to shut down other people's free speech. And that's just wrong.
Okay. Michael in Seattle, Washington, talking about views on COVID, and particularly science and medicine and those worlds, and if they've changed because of COVID, in his case not. Edgar in Bridgeport, Connecticut on our Yes line. Good morning, you're next. It's the Washington Journal. For the first day of February, a recent poll conducted by the Associated Press showed less than half of American surveys said they had a great deal of confidence in the scientific and medical communities. This survey measuring that view during the COVID-19 pandemic. The skepticism grew more divided among Republicans and Democrats who took part in the survey. In our program this morning, to start it off, we want to ask you if your own personal views on science and medicine have changed due to the COVID pandemic. Here's how you can let us know. If you say yes, those views have changed, call us at 202-748-8000 and tell us how. If you say no, those views have not changed, call us at 202-748-8001. Perhaps you are unsure. You can call us at 202-748-8002. You can text us those thoughts at 202-748-8003. Post on Facebook at facebook.com/cspan. And you can also go to our Twitter feed and post there too, at CSpanWJ. It was the Associated Press teaming up with the Center for Research, taking a look at this idea of trust in the scientific and medical communities, when that general overall confidence in those communities was taken amongst those who participated. 48% of those saying that they would say that they have a great deal, and that's how the poll expresses it, in those scientific and medical communities, and 45% saying that they have only some confidence in that, with very little saying they have hardly any. If you go and break it down by partisan views, 51% of Democrats who were surveyed during that time, 42% of Republicans, said they had a great deal of confidence in the scientific community in 2018. When you go to 2021, that gap widened significantly to 30, with nearly 2/3 of Democrats expressing confidence in those scientific communities compared to 1/3 of Republicans. And then taking a look specifically at medicine, when you in that survey, only a little bit, 37%, 38% saying they had a great deal of confidence, some saying they only had some of confidence. And that's just some of the survey results that were taken by the Associated Press. This came, as far as trust in science and those issues, this came into play over the last few weeks over the podcaster Joe Rogan. It was a group of scientists and medical community people who sent a letter to the company Spotify about Mr. Rogan's podcast. And in that letter, they write in part this: throughout the pandemic, Joe Rogan has repeatedly spread misleading and false claims on his podcast, provoking distrust in science and medicine. He has discouraged vaccination in young people and children, and correctly claimed that mRNA vaccines are, quote, gene therapy, promoted off-label use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19 contrary to FDA warnings, and spread a number of unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. It goes on from there, including the fact that Mr. Rogan had hosted Dr. Robert Malone, who was suspended from Twitter for spreading misinformation about COVID. You probably saw in the news then in the most recent of days that Mr. Rogan apologizing for some of that content, specifically taking a look at the COVID and issues related to COVID, saying that he would take a better approach as far as how he chooses guests and those topics as well. So with that in mind, we want to ask you about that confidence, particularly that you might have in the science community, in the medical community, and if that confidence been influenced by any way during the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, here's how you can let us know your thoughts this morning. If you say those yes, those views have changed, 202-748-8000. If you say no, 202-748-8001. And perhaps you are unsure about where you stand on that, 202-748-8003. You can also text us at 202-748-8003 as well. Some people posting on our Facebook page this morning when it comes to this topic, saying, Chris Chase from Facebook saying, yes, we need more education on science and medicine in schools because clearly so many Republicans who doubt science and medical are a product of a lack of understanding in science and medicine in our schools and our education system. From Michelle Kilborn from our Facebook page saying, no, it's not changed my view of science or medicine. This experience has cemented my view of the abysmal state of U.S. education, however, and the people who so easily follow and mimic demagogues and gullibly believe irrational causes. Christina Baddock from Facebook saying, not when it comes to the true facts of science and medicine. I still don't trust the World Health Organization, the CDC, the government, or anyone pretending to have a medical degree. And then Marianne from Facebook saying, I'm more skeptical of scientific conclusions that might have a financial, political, or otherwise subjective motive. Again, Facebook is how you can post there if you want to share your thoughts this morning as well. On our yes line, as far as views changing on the science and medical communities because of COVID, this is Margaret in Leavenworth, Kansas. He's starting us off. Go ahead, tell us how those views have changed.
Hi, good morning. I have 30 years as an RN in this country, and I think our education is so behind in science, and it was very abysmal for me to see how dumb people are. I mean, you'd think our country would be smarter than this, and how somebody politicized an epidemic. That's very, very dangerous. So I think science and medicine is good, but I think our country, it should be embarrassed. I think if you took a survey of people, you'd find they're like fourth grade and what their understanding of the human body and how you spread diseases. I mean, it's woeful. So a lot of it, people need to get educated, not the internet, but real school, you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also on our yes line saying those views have changed of the science and medical communities. This is from Paul in New Albany, Indiana. Go ahead.
Well, I think COVID-19, I think things have changed for the positive. I think I see vaccines. We're developing more. We're developing more awareness. And I think we need to give it a little more time, but it's better than it was 2 years ago. And people are gradually getting better, and the word's getting around that vaccines are the way to go, and I do believe in mandates.
So when it comes to those specific changes, or at least the changes that you're expressing, it's in the as far as vaccine development process, or are there other things involved there too?
Well, I think it's vaccine development, but I think if you look on the news, like little children are becoming more aware of the disease than their parents. And I think that's where the future is the youth.
Okay, that's Paul there in Indiana, telling his thoughts about how he thinks things have changed, or his views have changed due to that. When people were surveyed about their own risk to COVID, it was the New York Times in a recent survey done of almost 1,500 adults saying, and the question was, how worried are you about becoming seriously sick from the coronavirus? 14% of Democrats saying very worried, 33% saying somewhat worried, not too worried at all, about 30%, and not at all at 22%. The same question posed to Republicans, 6% saying they're very worried about getting sick from coronavirus, 16% saying somewhat, not too worried at 24%, and then not at all at 52%. Again, you know, if you want to share your thoughts on your views of science and medicine, and if they've changed due to the pandemic, again, you can call us on our yes, no, or unsure lines. Jim from Wisconsin, also on our yes line. Hello, you're next up.
I incorrectly, I should be on the no line. I told the telephone operator that I made a mistake, but I'm on the, I was on the yes line, yes.
So you're saying no, your views haven't changed then?
No, they have changed.
Well, tell us how they've changed.
I don't like things being mandated from above, way above by the CDC and all that stuff. I think that everything should be done on a person-to-person basis with a doctor, and that there shouldn't be any, because how can they have any familiarity with what's going on with each individual person when they're mandating that ivermectin and some of this other stuff can't be used? I mean, it doesn't make any sense that everything's like remote control from an outside source. It's just, I mean, no medicine's ever been like that I've ever heard of. Doctors are supposed to have a high degree of discretion in each individual patient, and all of a sudden they got their hands tied behind their back. I don't understand this.
So in the if you look at the science community in itself, the medical community itself, how much trust do you place in them as of today? Well,
I don't have any trust in this RMA vaccines, and Dr. Malone and all these people. He's the one that came up with the RMA vaccines. He's one of the chief people that made it. He talks against it. It's got a 55-year-old hold on medical information that we can't look into it for 55 years for the clinical trials. It's an experimental vaccine.
Okay.
I can't understand any of it.
This is on our yes line. This is Cindy in Norwalk, Connecticut, asking about views on science and medicine, if they've changed due to COVID. Cindy, you're next. Hello.
Hi, good morning. You know, I don't think it really helps when people try to say, oh, it's a Republican thing, Democrat thing, or you're stupid, you're not educated. I don't think that helps at all. I think it just makes people dig their heels in. The reason why my views have changed is, you know, it's not so much the medicine per se. I feel like most of the medical community do honor their Hippocratic oath. But, you know, there's just a lack of respect for people who are questioning it, just like people question anything, religion, what have you. feel like it's a lot of it is big pharma pushing it. The whole Joe Rogan thing, I don't think he did anything wrong. I feel like the squashing of people that are questioning it make people suspicious.
And when you say questioning it, you're saying specifically questioning doctors about COVID or the science or medical professionals about COVID, that kind of thing?
I think it's more the institutions, the CDC. I think there's a lot of good doctors that would like to use some of the medications that maybe not ivermectin, but there's also the monoclonal antibodies, which there's a shortage of, and then there was the whole thing they're calling it horse dewormer when it really wasn't. I mean, if you watch Joe Rogan interview with Sanjay Gupta, he doesn't always have what some people considered quacks. I mean, Dr. Malone is not a quack. I think we're demonizing formerly respected people in the medical community because they have a different opinion. So, it is right. The emails with Fauci show that they saw that this was engineered. When he talked to a bunch of scientists when this first came out, and he squashed it. They didn't want anybody to know that this was possibly an engineered virus. When there's things like that out there, it's going to cause suspicion. Whether you're educated, I don't care how, you could be highly educated and still be a little suspicious. And as far as polio vaccines, well, those actually...
Well, I'll stop you there only because it goes a little farther than what we're talking about. But Margaret is next up in Texas, in Kerrville, Texas. She says, no, views haven't changed. Margaret, hello.
No, I haven't changed. I'm a critical thinker, which means I believe in science. What amazes me, all these people around who live within the results of science, and they like driving their cars, the stoves they use, but they don't think critically about it. And you don't have to, I may be highly educated, but a person doesn't have to be highly educated to be a critical thinker. You can learn it through life experience. And like the first woman that was on, I am shocked by the people who cannot think critically, cannot think reasonably one step at a time on what is going on and how medicines evolve.
Well, let me ask you this: when it comes specifically when it comes to COVID-related issues, you said you think critically about the science. What science do you reference as far as thinking critically? What do you look at yourself?
Well, I believe in the science behind the vaccines. I believe the science behind Dr. Fauci, who's been in it for years and years and years in this environment. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, it's okay. You answered the question. There's a bit of a delay when you watch on television and everything else. When it comes to the vaccines themselves, news of yesterday saying it's the Food and Drug Administration granting full approval to Moderna's coronavirus vaccine. The agency announcing Monday that vaccine, known as Spikevax, was previously available under emergency use authorization and is the second coronavirus vaccine to get that full FDA approval. Pfizer and BioNTech's product was approved back in August. Views and if they've changed, views of the science and medical communities and if they've changed due to COVID. Alexander in Brooklyn says no. Alexander, good morning. You're next up.
Yes, hello, good morning. I mean, it's pretty sad just listening to some of the callers and their concerns. And I guess, just thinking about this as I was waiting, I think it's more about, what is the reflection of this country? I mean, this is a sick country. We have people with so many underlying conditions. And, when you think about the way that we eat, the way that we live our lives here, there would be hesitation to believe in the science and say, well, this vaccine is good for me. It's going to save my life. I spent 2 years in New York City in the middle of this, and I didn't even get sick. And I went 1 week to Arizona, 1 week, and I went to a bar for 10 minutes. There were no vaccine signs outside. They didn't even need vaccine cards, nothing. People just walked right in. The bartenders didn't even have masks. And I got sick. I'm literally in the last day of my quarantine in my studio in New York City.
So when you talk about your level of trust then in science and medicine, then what do you base that on?
Well, I'm basing it on, proof myself. Like, I got the vaccine, I got the booster shot, and for me, my case was mild, and it wasn't that hard. And I understand, if you haven't gotten this, for a lot of the things that people say out there, it could be too much. And you could say, well, no, I haven't gotten it, or, I don't trust the science, and then you get it. And then you understand. Okay. And then you're like, oh, my God, this is real. So, all I would say is I trust the science, and I just hope that people don't realize too late that, yes, vaccines do work, and hopefully you don't have to learn the hard way by somebody in your family passing away or you getting a very bad case of this.
So in the worlds of the scientific and medical community, if your views have changed on those communities because of COVID, that's what we're asking you to engage with us in this first hour. If you say yes, those views have changed, 202-748-8000. If you say no, that the views have not changed and you want to tell us why, 202-748-8001. And perhaps you are unsure, call us at 202-748-8003, much like Michael is calling from Washington, D.C. on our unsure line. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, sir. It's a blessing to be here with everything that's going on. And we got this war, we got this disease going on. It got people scared, man. I'm serious, man. I've been wanting to talk to a real political person for a long time.
Well, you're saying you're unsure of your views on the scientific and medical community. What do you mean by that?
I just believe that the science is going different directions depending on where you're getting the information from. Wherever you live is probably different from where I'm from, like the city and the country, or the California or the East Coast. It's like real confusing.
So as far as information that you seek, say, because of COVID, where do you look to for that?
I look to my own professionals around me, and we laugh at this shit, for real.
Okay, that's Michael in Washington, D.C. Annenberg, the Annenberg Public Policy Center did a survey on its own, particularly taking a look at Dr. Anthony Fauci, clearly the face of the pandemic over these last couple of years, and his work at the CDC as well. It said that in the survey, it said Americans said battered by waves of COVID-19 and confusion over shifting government messages about it. Americans' confidence in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention declined in January, with drops both among groups of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents and Republican-leaning independents, according to the January survey. Confidence in the CDC is providing the public with trustworthy information about the means of preventing and treating COVID fell from 77% only 2 months ago in November of 2021 to 72% in January of 2022. In addition, the survey found for the first time a significant drop in confidence in Dr. Fauci, who, as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, has been the target of withering attacks in conservative media outlets throughout the nearly 2-year pandemic. Confidence in Fauci dropped to 65% in January of 2022, a statistically meaningful drop over the 9 months since April 2021, when it was 71%. Speaking of Dr. Fauci himself, he was on MSNBC last week, was asked about these questions of the lack of trust in science and public health. Here's part of his response.
The issue of restoring trust in the public health sector. There's been we've discussed this, you and I have. There are grifters, there are people that are intentionally trying to politicize this. But obviously there is a collective disappointment in public health. How do you want to fix this going forward? What are some things that you'd recommend in improving, whether it's the CDC's reputation, public health in general? I guess lessons learned in the communication part of things.
Well, I think you just said it. First of all, we have to stick with the science. And one of the treacheries of this, if you want to call it that, is that this is a moving target. And the public understandably expects a very consistent message that doesn't change. And in fact, when the virus, which has changed, I mean, let's just look at the facts, Chuck. We've had the original Wuhan strain, then we had Alpha, Beta, Delta, Omicron, each with a different bit of a characteristic to it. So things have changed. And with the change in the virus has come change in some of the scientific issues that have resulted in change in some recommendations. That's the reality. Could we have done better in communicating that? No doubt, Chuck. I think we all need to admit that and realize that. But the underlying reason for the change and some of the underlying reason for some of the communication issues is the fact that people need to recognize we're not dealing with a static target. We're dealing with a moving target. And I know that's so difficult for people to appreciate, but that's just what the reality is.
Again, that was Dr. Fauci on MSNBC, of course, on this program and on events from the White House. Plenty of Dr. Fauci and other medical officials talking about COVID over the last couple of years. If you want to get the collected works, so to speak, of what they've had to say about the pandemic over the last 2 years, I invite you to go to our website at cspan.org. When the president of this administration and the previous one held forums and briefings by medical communities, we taped them and archive them. Again, you can see them all at cspan.org. Talking about levels of trust in science and medicine, it was the AP, along with another research poll, asking people about this idea of confidence in the scientific community. 48% of those saying overall, when they were asked, showing a great deal of confidence. It breaks down to 64% of Democrats showing that confidence, 34% of Republicans, a 30-point gap. That's up 9 percentage points since 2018. Let's go to Chris in Texas on our Yes line. Hello. Chris in Texas? One more time for Chris in Texas. All right, we'll go to Max. Max in Mechanicsville, Maryland, on our No line. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. This is a great question. You've put out there the split between the two different politics parties in this country and what they feel about science, which the two topics have nothing to do with one another. Nothing's changed about science. Without science, we wouldn't have phrenology. Without science, we wouldn't have eugenics. Without science, we wouldn't have the cure for the common cold or the cure for cancer. Without science, we certainly wouldn't have fentanyl out there. Science hasn't changed. What's changed is the way that scientists view themselves. Scientists now view themselves as infallible. Science has flip-flopped with the clergy of the church. You can't question the clergy of the church or you'll be excommunicated from the church. That's what's changed. Science is still the same flawed practice. It's still the method. It's still the experimentation. And everything we believe about science today, by the time our kids have grandkids, it will all be laughed at because scientists will know more than what we know now.
So you're saying and calling it and saying that your views haven't changed. Is that the case?
Right. No, science is science. Science hasn't changed. I know exactly what science is. It's a method of finding out how the universe works. It's an enormous body of study. You can't just wrap it up into Republican and Democrat. What's changed are scientists and the way they view themselves in our society. That's what changed. We are elevating these people to something they don't deserve.
Do you think to that degree they should be listened to on these kind? He's gone. Let's go to Matthew. Matthew in Jeffersonville, Indiana, on our Yes line. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you.
You're on, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, my view has changed as being a type 1 diabetic. When the pandemic started, I was like everybody else, scared, because I had an autoimmune disease. And then I caught it. I wasn't vaccinated or nothing. I was in the hospital with diabetes issues in DK when I caught it. And I didn't have any symptoms, no nothing, but I had no immune system, so it should have devastated me. So after that, my views did change a little bit, so I started diving into it more. And my big questions are, is all of these political people that are invested in these companies have hidden interests in all these pharmaceutical companies. So why aren't they being held accountable for stuff like that if they're making major decisions for all the population when they have hidden interests?
When you looked into backgrounds, so you focus specifically on the financial side of it, not necessarily the medical side of it, or at least as far as treatments and why you get COVID and how people experience COVID, that kind of thing.
Right, because after I caught COVID, and it should have killed me, I mean, I had no immune system. They said if I caught a common cold, it would kill me. But I caught Delta COVID, and I didn't even have a fever.
And you're looking in the medical background, what have you found? Or at least the financial background, what have you found?
Well, not very much, because it's all hidden. I mean, it's all hidden through shell companies and stuff. I mean, that's why there's no accountability anymore. Nobody is held responsible for their actions, it seems like. I mean, you can go across the board with police and everybody across a whole bunch of endeavors, but now since we're dealing with a medical consequence in the public sector, and it's affecting everybody in the world, it's a little bit more on TV now, per se, than most things. So it's just the way I'm looking at it, all right, our country ordered 800 billion vaccines. If they charge $1 for them vaccine, that's $800 billion, which we all know they're not going to be $1. They're going to be a couple $100. So You're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars moving around over this.
Matthew in Indiana giving us his thoughts as well, looking at the financial background of it, to death tolls and the like. It was the Wall Street Journal this morning saying that according to federal authorities, they estimate that 987,456 more people have died since early 2020 than would have otherwise been expected based on long-term trends. People killed by coronavirus infections account for overwhelming majority of cases. Thousands more died from derivative causes like disruptions in their healthcare and spikes in overdoses. COVID-19 has left the same proportion of the population dead, about 0.3%, as did World War II, and in less time. Then you can find that in the Wall Street Journal. When it comes to views of science and medicine, and if those views have changed because of COVID. Lewis in Pensacola, New Jersey says no. Good morning.
Hey, Pedro. I haven't seen you in a bit. You look like you lost some weight. No, science, nothing has changed my view on science. The only thing that's changed my view, as the previous callers stated, how this virus has been politicized. That piece you just had with Fauci, the arrogance of that man explaining to us about how viruses change. Everybody knows that. But, of course, according to him, we just can't grasp that. That's all I have to say, sir. Bye.
Lakeland, Florida, on our Unshore line. We'll hear from Lynn. Lynn, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm unsure because shortly after I got the Moderna shot, I noticed a huge lump on my neck, and it turned out to be a lymphoma. Since then, it has gradually decreased and decreased and is now showing very low active. However, I keep running into people who came down with some case of having cancer and having cancer of the breast. And it doesn't seem like there's any place to report it. So I'm reporting this now. The other thing is that when we see ads on television for drugs, they evidently are required to report possible side effects. And yet we hear nothing of any side effects having to do with any of these vaccines. And I am not going to get the booster because having been diagnosed with the lymphoma that is being fed by my carotid artery, I'm certainly not going to take the chance of getting that cancer boosted and reactivated by the shot. Although I do have to say that before I got the vaccine, I was worried about getting COVID. I'm 75. And after I got the 2 shots, I felt relieved. But, of course, then when I
had the cancer in my neck, I was not too relieved.
What convinced you to ultimately get the vaccine?
Well, because of my age, it was very simple to get it. I'm in Polk County, Florida. We were having spikes, and I'm obese, so I didn't want to take the chance. I hadn't run into anybody who had COVID except that my son's father-in-law, who's in his 80s, got it and was very sick. He was sent home from the hospital and seemed to be getting sicker and sicker. And so that he went back to the emergency room, and they said to him, well, are you taking your medicine for pneumonia? And he said, nobody ever told me I had pneumonia. I didn't know that I have pneumonia. They sent me home from the hospital with no medication. They said I was over Moderna. So there's all kinds of side effects that we're not hearing about from anybody, scientists or medical people.
There is reporting out, though, on some side effects. You would have to find that online, but to point you to the internet if you wanted to search that. About a half hour in of this question on if your views on science and medicine have changed due to COVID. You can call and let us know on 3 lines. If you say yes, the views have changed, you want to tell us why, 202-748-8000. If you say no, the views haven't changed, 202-748-8001. And if you are unsure, 202-748-8002. Text us at 202-748-8003. Rick up next in Los Angeles, California. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Just want to start off by saying I had a brother-in-law who died from getting that booster shot. It's the first time I ever heard of that, somebody dying from getting the booster shot. Anyway, you had a caller about 8 calls ago that called on the no line when he was really a yes, or he called on the yes line when he was really a no. That's what happened. I believe that when you mix politics with science, you get political science, and that's what we have. As far as Dr. Fauci, all you have to do is follow his emails. If you watch Fox News, they've been following this from day one. And they got all his emails showing that he knew this came from the lab as far back as March of 2020. But he's the funder of many of these scientists, and he got them to cooperate to say that this did not come from the lab. It came from nature, which is a total lie. And you listen to Jim Jordan and Rand Paul.
Sure, they're questioned all the time. They question them on several committee hearings, which you can watch on C-SPAN. As far as what specific views did you have about COVID at the beginning of it, and how has it changed?
Well, I believe it's gotten too political. It's become political science. You can't question it. They're on the side of the Democrats who are doing nothing but lying to us. They've lied to us from Obamacare to now. They just constantly lie to get us in the cameras and lie to you straight, bold-facedly.
Okay. We'll go to Yana from Oak Ridge, Tennessee on our no line. Hello.
Good morning. I'd like to say I've lived in the world of science for a long time, and that the one thing that scientists love to do when they go to meetings is to prove each other wrong. And that is how eventually, little by little, they approximate the truth. The truth is out there. We don't always know what it is. You know, Pascal said that the truth does not begin to exist the minute we discover it. It's always out there, and we are always trying to find it. And when I was a teacher, which was for 20 years, my students would come and interview me and say, Miss Stats, what is your philosophy of life? And, you know, what are you going to say? So I decided I'm going to say action causes reaction, and that people should double-check before they jump on the bandwagon of all these.
Well, let's start specifically then as far as your views of COVID going into it at the beginning and why they haven't changed. What were your views at the beginning?
Well, I heard about the article in The Lancet, which I heard about on C-SPAN, I think. And little by little, I realized this is probably a very serious situation because I listened to what the scientists or the biologists had to say about their findings. And little by little, you find out this is really virulent. And just listen and double-check and double-check. And
how did you double-check that once you listened to it?
Well, I read, and I listen to C-SPAN, and I listen to all the television stations that I have time for. And you listen to people like Dr. Fauci, who is a specialist, who knows more about these things than we do. And when people say he lied, I really think it is anecdotal and really tragic. People cannot double-check because they have not been alerted to the fact that the scientific method is the only thing that we really have to have hope in.
Okay. That's Yana there in Tennessee. One of the names you heard, especially connected with the Joe Rogan podcast, was Dr. Robert Malone. He spoke at a recent rally against vaccine mandates. That rally here in Washington, you can still see it on our website at cspan.org. But here's a portion of his presentation at the rally.
I come to you with an open heart as a physician committed to healing, bringing 3 simple words, each of which ring like bells in the soul of honest people. Integrity, dignity, community. Integrity is a commitment to truth in what you say, how you live, how you treat others. Dignity flows from respect for ourselves, for each other, and for the world we live in. Community is what binds us together to each other and gives our lives purpose and meaning. St. Augustine, the doctor of the Roman Catholic Church, famously said, "The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself." Harry Truman, a warrior against war profiteering, something we could use more of now, famously said, "I just tell the truth and they think it's hell." These are my truths, and I believe they're self-evident. We should not have politicized the public health response to SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19.
Again, more of that event available at cspan.org. We'll hear from Michael, Seattle, Washington, on our No Line. Hi.
Hi. Thanks very much for taking my call. Can I say something about Neil Young, Joe Rogan?
If it's connected to what's going on as far as trust in science and medicine with COVID, sure.
I have stuff to say about that, too. Just real quick, Joe.
Well, let's start with that then, and you can reverse it to the other thing. Yeah.
Sure. Actually, I prefer to start with that. The lady was talking about critical thinking. For me, that means questioning everything. And then another lady was saying scientists challenging each other and trying to prove each other wrong. That, again, is what I'm saying, question everything. And for me, the American Medical Association and the U.S. government has been lying to me my entire life about the medical qualities of cannabis. And they've been saying that there's 0 medical qualities to cannabis. And you have to ask why, when they could have been helping hundreds of millions of people, children with epilepsy, on and on, cancer, so many different things.
And how that relates to your views to COVID?
Well, they've lied to me my whole life, so why wouldn't they be doing it now? They lied to me about cannabis because they could make a bigger profit off of it. That's the whole reason. So why wouldn't I question what they're doing now?
So as far as specifically as the medicine and science behind COVID, what are you questioning?
I'm questioning the entire medical
I know you said that, but specifically to COVID and science behind it, what are you questioning specifically, since you've questioned everything?
My roommate of 20 years just tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago. And I sat in the same room with him. He was fully vaccinated. I'm not vaccinated. I drove in the car with him. I ate my dinners in the same room with him, and I'm fine. So, yes, I question all of this science, which is what the job of being a critical thinker is.
And Joe Rogan and Spotify?
And Joe Rogan and Neil Young, the thing about it is that Neil Young owned he owes his entire career to freedom of speech. You know, back in the 70s when he wrote Rockin' in the Free World, he would not have wrote that if he was in China or Russia. And now he wants to shut down other people's free speech. And that's just wrong.
Okay. Michael in Seattle, Washington, talking about views on COVID and particularly science and medicine and those worlds and if they've changed because of COVID, in his case not. Edgar in Bridgeport, Connecticut on our Yes line. Good morning. You're next.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Yes, my views have changed a lot, especially with the medical establishment we have now. Dr. Fauci has been caught lie after lie after lie, and we cannot trust this man to continue to lead us on this course. And I'm just saying, we have no confidence in leadership now because of what Dr. Fauci have done to us.
So is your concern more with the CDC and government officials, or is it with science and medicine themselves?
I'm concerned with with the whole establishment, with the CDC, with the FDA. They've been nothing but flip-flopping ever since this pandemic started. And Dr. Fauci has been caught lie after lie after lie. And like they said, if Dr. Malone, the inventor of mRNA, is saying it's dangerous, why wouldn't we listen to him? And, you know, it doesn't make no sense, you know?
Okay.
And
that's Edgar in Connecticut. The New York Times talks about international opinion of science and medicine in a recent poll that was taken. It says the results come from the public opinion poll in a report published by the Wellcome Trust, a foundation focused on health research in London, showing about 80% of people from 113 countries said they trusted science either, quote, a lot or, quote, some. About 3/4 of the 119,000 surveyed said they trust scientists either, quote, a lot or some. Quote, I'm not surprised by the results of the survey, said Fatima Tokafeshan, a geneticist and science communicator who was not involved with the poll. She suggested that interdisciplinary responses to the pandemic among scientists in fields ranging from public health to immunology to zoology to epidemiology helped people to understand the connections between science and their own well-being. Quote, the general public may not know scientists in real life, but most people know a doctor or a nurse. Now everyone has at least heard of a scientist or read something by a scientist. Again, that's some of the international perspective when it comes to trust in science and medicine because of COVID. We're asking you the same to share your thoughts on it. As far as views are concerned, Chris says his views have changed. He or she is in Texas. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Pedro. Can you hear me okay?
You are on. Go ahead.
Hello? Oh, excellent. Okay. Yes, the principles of science and medicine have not changed, but I think the profession has and the professionals. We now have a better idea of what providers are basically willing to accept wholesale whatever medical authorities say to be the truth. Even before COVID, though, I was concerned about the state of health care in our country. I think a lot of people would call our system, instead of health care, more of a sick care industry. And, you know, that has to do with, you know, pharmaceutical industries, the hospital systems, the insurance industry, et cetera. But to me, it appears more so that the healthcare industry, there's a lot of parallels with the military-industrial complex as far as truthful information. And I'm most interested in those voices that are being censored by big tech and media big tech and the media overlords.
Voices such as who?
I look at. Well, so I really respect the opinions of, you know, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. McCullough. He's from the Houston area. He's affiliated with Baylor.
And so as far as the providers are concerned, specifically, how have your views changed because of COVID? I know you talked on a broad sense, but specifically, how have those views changed?
Well, the way I would choose providers now has changed. I'm interested in knowing, you know, what my provider's opinions may be regarding COVID. On but that's a more of an individual point of view. On a broader sense, I'm concerned about the where COVID came from, the origin of COVID, why we're dealing with this in the first place, and what we're going to do to prevent it from happening next time. I see a lot of parallels with 9/11 as this just being a massive event, and there's a lot of questions surrounding it. A lot of people don't trust the official story.
Okay.
I think that's a big.
Okay. Well, we'll leave you there. Chris, that's Chris in Texas. We will hear next from Kyle. Kyle in South Glens Falls, New York, on our No line.
Yes. Good morning, Pedro.
Morning.
My opinion on this whole thing is this. We live in a small piece of history, every part of humanity. And we had this horrible pandemic that came down in our lifetime. So we put our best scientists, our best medical people on finding us a vaccine. They did the best they can, and in good faith. We lost 60,000 people a year to the flu. We lost 900,000 people to COVID. I've lost 2 personal friends that did not get vaccinated, even though we pleaded with them. Younger men, 60, 57 years old, healthy. People, listen to the scientists. Listen to the doctors. These vaccinations are helping. They're saving lives. Other countries are begging for the vaccine, begging to save their populace.
Which doctors specifically are you listening to, or which scientists specifically are you listening to?
Well, I typically listen to, I do trust the CDC. I do trust Dr. Fauci. I do trust my own physicians and the doctors in my healthcare system. I can't find a doctor or anyone that tells me not to get vaccinated, sir. I don't listen to the guys on the street. I don't listen to construction workers. I don't listen to guys that search their cell phone on Facebook to find medical advice. I listen to guys like Fauci, who spent their entire career studying these problems. These aren't just guys. These aren't politicians. Fauci's not a politician, sir. Fauci is a man who dedicated his life to saving lives. And I hope everything's good, and thank you for letting me talk.
That's Kyle there in South Glens Falls, New York, giving his opinion. If you look at the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal this morning, it talks about what was commonly known as Operation Warp Speed in the previous administration. This is by Alyssa Finley, an editorial writer, a member of the editorial board, under the headline, Operation Warp Speed slowly gets its due. She writes, the Warp Speed shifted the financial risk to government by placing orders for vaccines and therapies before they were authorized by the Food and Drug Administration or even shown to be effective. This encouraged pharmaceutical companies to expand manufacturing capacity so vaccines and therapies were ready to be distributed once they had the FDA's green light. Going on to say that Operation Warp Speed in July of 2020 announced a $450 million manufacturing and supply agreement with Regeneron for up to 300,000 doses for its experimental monoclonal antibody. A few months later, it ordered 300,000 doses of Eli Lilly's experimental antibody. The FDA granted the emergency use authorization to both treatments in November of 2020. Supply of those monoclonals exceeded demand last winter because many people were unaware of the treatments. Still, during the final 2 months of the Trump presidency, Operation Warp Speed ordered another 1.25 million doses of Regeneron and 650,000 of Eli Lilly's antibody treatments, leaving the Biden administration well supplied. Again, more of that if you want to read it there at the opinion section of the Wall Street Journal. A few more minutes about your views on COVID, if they've changed, views of science and medicine, if they've changed because of COVID. This is Josephine, Livingston, New Jersey. Good morning.
Good morning. My view of medicine hasn't changed in the sense that if you go to your doctor, you listen to your doctor. But on the other hand, as 2 examples, I have 2 family members, both have cancer. One has, I can't even pronounce it. The other one has metastatic breast cancer. Any cancer hospital that you go to will automatically have you vaccinated. They don't ask you. And so you're saying to yourself, well, gee willikers, if these people are so ill and they think it's so important to be vaccinated, there has to be for them a good reason to protect their lives. It's just sad that we think today that we know more than they do. I know you're all talking about Joe Rogan. I looked at this tattooed man. He's supposed to be the science. I don't know. I've never heard of this individuals.
He's a podcaster host, no medical background as far as I know, but he's a podcaster host. But go ahead.
I mean, you look at, if he was on the street, think about it. If he was on the street with all those tattoos, I would say, what is he a criminal? I mean, this is what you're listening to? Now, as far as Dr. Fauci is concerned, the man was appointed in 1984 by Ronald Reagan. He's won so many awards for his contribution to science. He's never lied. Now, does science evolve? Of course it does. I mean, anybody who's ever been treated for cancer knows how well science has evolved. Thank God, to the better. So do we always trust your doctor? Of course not. You question when you go to your doctor. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say someone has lied, to say someone has gained money over it, look, you have to be an individual. You've got to act on your own. If you cannot think critically, and I did take science, I trust science because I studied it.
Okay. That's Josephine. That's Josephine in New Jersey giving her thoughts this morning. Let's hear from Daryl, Colfax, Washington State. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes well. Go ahead, sir. You're on.
Hey, well, I have changed my views considerably. Early on in the pandemic, we knew that it was spread through aerosols. Yet, have you ever seen an expert on aerosols talk about it? All we hear are people who really don't know that much about aerosols telling us how the disease is spread. And then initially, now we're to the fact that we do need the proper mask to wear to prevent aerosols from taking them in. And earlier, they were saying just wear anything you want over your face and you'll be fine. And then we've found since then that actually people are contracting the disease if they're not properly protected. There's been a lot of stuff that has been said that has changed in the last 2 years that was obvious initially when it came out. In 1918, we knew more about how to protect ourselves from that pandemic than we did today, knowing how to protect ourselves from this one. Just all the stupid rules. Initially, in our state, we cut off fishing. I mean, how stupid is that? No better place to be than out fishing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep, gotcha. That's Daryl there in Washington State. Larry from New Jersey texting us this morning saying that when it comes to views, it's given me hope for future episodes of Virus Is Yet to Come. He says more concerning are the anti-vaxxers and overwhelming of the healthcare system. You can text us at 202-748-8003 your thoughts on views and if they've changed, views of science and medicine, and if they've changed due to COVID. From Garland in Lufkin, Texas, says his views have not changed. Garland, hello.
Yeah, how you doing, Pedro?
I'm fine, thank you.
My views haven't changed. At first, when Trump was in there, I thought, he was doing that Jonestown thing by the Parliament. And so I changed when Biden got in there and started trying to get people help. So, I feel like, science, you have to go with the science and the doctors. I mean, like they say, the variant, the coronavirus it changes, and so they got to change too. And they giving us the best information that they can. But like Trump mother said, once he was in there, it wasn't going to be nothing but chaos, and it's still chaos today. And I thank you for taking the call.
Well, Dr. Fauci was part of the Trump administration and this administration. Did you trust him back then and now?
Yeah, I trusted him, but I didn't trust Trump because he was trying to stand up, but he didn't want to disrespect Trump, and he was trying to go along with it, but it was too much for him to take that he could sit there and just lie. That's why they took him off the TV for a while. And I've been watching this stuff since the beginning.
In Ohio, we will hear next from Paul in Paynesville on our No line. Good morning.
Good morning. I had the COVID back in August of 2020 when it was first coming out. and I had taken the vaccine and the booster. Since then, science and medicine, you have to have some faith in science and medicine. I mean, the medications you take over the counter all go through some form of a clinical trial of sorts to see if it's safe for the general population. The individuals who may not want to take the vaccines and the boosters, I'm sure they're taking some type of a medication, whether it's prescribed by a physician or it's over the counter. And if it's not going through its regimen of testing, those medications, those antibiotics, the cancer treatments, people that take insulin for diabetes, all of those medications this particular vaccine certainly went through a speed up process for approval. But those medications that you and I take and everybody else takes to some level, some degree, goes through science and medicine. And if you want to take the approach of, God forbid, someone you come down with cancer, are you going to refuse chemo? It runs in the same clinical trials. Those individuals that decline to take, chemo for a cancer treatment or extend your life, if you take the opinion that science and medicine can't be trusted, then don't take the chemo. And then you would die within the time that the physician would say that you would end up dying from, because you're not taking the chemo to save your life.
Okay. So Paul there in Ohio sharing his thoughts this morning. By the way, the Senate panel today looks at the topic of COVID, but particularly when it deals with mental health issues and substance abuse issues as well. It will feature experts there. If you want to see that hearing, you can see it live, 10 o'clock today on C-SPAN 3, online at cspan.org. You can watch the full coverage of it on our new video app, C-SPAN Now. Let's hear from Gregory. Gregory in Silver Spring, Maryland, on our Yes line. Views have changed on science and medicine due to COVID. Hello.
Good morning, Pedro. This is a wonderful question. I think there's a distinction between the two as far as science and medicine and how it applies to where we're living today. In my opinion, Pedro, science is proof, while on the other hand, medicine is a way to believe any misconception. And that's the only thing that we have is medicine. We can't save ourselves any other way by checking back, looking into our own misconception.
What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example?
Okay, example of what?
The second point you made about medicine.
So, it's just a fancy way of saying that, medicine, ultimately, I think it's a way of finding out whether we're being misconstrued or correctly guided. And that's what the practice of medicine is all about. And I wanted to add to that faith, in my opinion, is completely out of the picture. It really is just between science, whether it being proof, substantiated, unsubstantiated, or medicine being a way to believe or prove or disprove any misconception.
Okay, we're going to hear from John, last call, North Hollywood, California, on our No line. Hello.
Hello, dear host Pedro Echeverria. Dear viewers, according to reliable sources, someone by name Chang Fung Ming from China intentionally spread coronavirus because a criminal in American government and another criminal in Netherlands government and another criminal in Belgium's government keep killing good-looking people.
Okay, caller, we're asking about views of science and medicine, if they've changed because of COVID. What are your views and how have they changed?
Yes, I'm going to say after I tell
Well, we're running out of time, caller, so if you could just tell us how those views have changed, I appreciate it.
No, nothing has changed. They have to The science says spreading coronavirus is wrong. This man wants to spread the virus because there's criminals in Belgium, Netherlands government, and American government kill good-looking people. He wants them not to. He wants everyone to wear masks.
Okay. That's John there. North Hollywood, California, finishing off this hour. Appreciate those who've participated. Thanks for doing so. Coming up, a couple of guests joining us to talk about various topics.